So, welcome everybody. This is Ron Funderburk and Nostradamus Nate joining together to put together just our off take, our unscripted outtake version of what you might think about for your fantasy football strategy this week. We focus on DraftKings and we focus on cash and tournament games. So, Nostradamus Nate, what are you looking at this week?
Well, I've got to flip the question back to you, the question of the week. Cam and Cash? Cam and Cash?
Ooh.
Are you going to roll with this guy?
Ooh, that is tough, man. And I like Cam Newton as a person. I really do like him as a person. I'm struggling with him as a player this week, especially in cash. 1 week, I just don't know if he's going to know the system well enough. Yeah. He's 5,100. Which is cheap, but I always seem to mess up and lose every time I go with that cheap quarterback who's that gamble. Guys went with Justin Fields earlier this year and lost. Guys went with, Tua Tagovailoa when he was cheap and lost. I don't necessarily know if you need to gamble at quarterback. Yeah. I think paying down at quarterback is fine, but I don't think you need to pay all the way down for a gamble. What do you think?
And speaking of that, do you generally pay down at quarterback in your cash games?
I do.
That's your strategy?
That's my strategy.
Yeah.
Unless there's just so much value created from the chalkiness of injury reports, right? If I had planned to have a running back who was going to be 7,000 or 8,000, and then now I got a guy who's 5,600, I got an extra 1,500 to 2,500 to play around with. Yeah, I might go ahead and say, okay, well, let me get Lamar Jackson for an extra 1,000, or let me get, But anytime I gamble at quarterback, man, it usually doesn't work out too well for me.
Yeah, and that's against the cash game rules, right? You want safety, you want a floor, right? You don't want to be going for these higher priced, guys that, hey, if they put a low output, your cash game is crushed. You want that safety, you want that floor, and so that's why I asked about the Cam and Cash. What is attractive about him is his legs, right? Rushing quarterback's got the rushing equity and rushing touchdown equity. And again, you can pair him with that Nostradamus Nate nasty pick of the week.
but he is going against one of the worst teams to go against for quarterbacks, right? He's going against
the worst. The Washington football team is rated 32nd in DVOA against quarterbacks, and they're second to last in DVOA against wide receivers, right? And so that's, again, why Robbie Anderson was Nostradamus Nate's nasty pick of the week. But DJ Moore clearly is a good option as well. And, DJ Moore might be a good option, not stacked with Cam, but just as a good one-off play. And could get him at low ownership because he's another guy that's disappointed fantasy owners this week, not hitting the mark for the majority of the weeks. And I think, just like the rest of the Panthers roster, they're really excited to have Cam in the building, man. And so, you got to play that narrative and get some level of exposure to the Carolina Panthers because, they could ride off this wave of emotion to, get a couple wins in a row here.
Believe it or not, Nate, I looked at tickets on StubHub this week to go to the game on Sunday.
Oh, yeah? Cool.
And tickets are through the roof. Cam made these tickets go back up in price, man. You can't get a lower level seat for under $300 right now in the Panthers. And I'm like, what?
Y'all that Charlotte economy.
Yeah.
Cam being back has brought some dollars into the city.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
One other game that we didn't really touch on is this Bengals versus Raiders game, right? It's sitting there at 49.5 as a total and almost a pick 'em. It's like a 1 point spread. right? So, Vegas is anticipating it being a really competitive game, possibly a shootout. I really like it in terms of running out Joe Burrow and stacking him with Jamar Chase, or probably actually have more ownership in my stack of T. Higgins over Jamar Chase. And this is a tournament play to go more with T. Higgins than Jamar. T. Higgins, if you look at the stats, man, his target share and yards share, air yards share is, I think, higher than Jamar's, if not, really close. So he's getting a ton of attention from Burrow, just, hasn't connected as much as Jamar has with him. And then, on the other side, you can absolutely run it back with Waller or Renfro, or even, Brian Edwards, Josh Jacobs. They're all at, low price points here, with what's his face, not being able to play because of that tragedy. That's allowed for more targets to the Wallers, the Renfros, the Brian Edwardses of the world. So I think that's absolutely a game, this Bengals Raiders game, that you can game stack up in tournaments.
I was able to pick up Renfro in my season long league, and I have Devontae Adams as my season long league, and like for the past 2 weeks, Renfro's beaten Devontae Adams. Primarily, Devontae Adams' situation is bad, right? With Aaron Rodgers coming off of COVID and doing, had Love as his quarterback or whatever. And I was tempted, very tempted to start Renfro in my season long league. I know we're talking about DraftKings, but that temptation for me to start Renfro in my season long league actually made me play him in some tournaments because he was so cheap, and I just felt like, with Ruggs not being in the target share anymore, and Renfro already had like a high floor. He already was going to get 7 targets a game, 5 catches a game.
Yeah. I mean, he's the safety blanket there, right?
Yeah.
They call him third and Renfro for a reason, right? So yeah, man. I mean, he's got that steady floor. A perfect kind of cash game play, or a perfect guy to have in your season long, because you can always rely on him to have 10, 12 plus points. And increasingly, as the season has gone on, he's got in the box too. He's a red zone target. So I mean, he's a good guy again to have in your cash games and your season long, especially. Hey, just stepping back, man, I really think that what's going to unlock this slate for fantasy players in week 11 is the choices that you make with regards to running backs. Okay. Right. So, let's go back 1 week to week 10. Fantasy players were flocking to those low-priced running backs, the Dearness Johnson, the Mark Ingram, the Michael Carter from the Jets, right? And so, popular thing in fantasy football is recency bias, right? And what, the Sharks jokingly call the donkeys. The donkeys are going to go right back to that strategy of playing these low-priced running backs that really pay off. And so it could give you an opportunity, especially in tournaments, to, go to our rock steady, higher price guys, because I think, again, the donkeys and just a lot of fantasy players, regardless if you're a sharp or a donkey, are going to scroll past or overlook, the high price guys that are steady eddies and can, really blow up at any game. So I'm talking about the McCaffreys, the Dalvin Cooks, the Kamaras, right? I think they're all going to be relatively low owned this week. So it could really be that differentiator. And as I said, kind of unlock the slate and be the key to success for tourneys this week.
So, all right. I know it's Thursday and we're playing around, right?
Yep.
So I have to lock AJ Dillon into my cash game.
Got to.
Locked.
Mm-hmm.
He's locked in. Okay. I also think that your decision around running back is the key to everything else. That's just my opinion. I might be wrong.
100%, especially on FanDuel where you get, more credit for yards and TDs. So yeah, but even on DK, similar to last week, I think the winning lineups are going to have a running back in the flex, to take advantage of, these higher priced guys that are going to be overlooked, by most fantasy players, as well as, fitting in Dylan. So Dylan absolutely, locked and loaded into your cash gains, but he's, an equally good tournament play as well. And so, in that high total game, we talked about, the Vikes v Cheeseheads, right? He's absolutely the kind of run back option that I'd consider most strongly, even over, the Devontae Adams of the world. If you're going with, like a Cousins to Thielen or Jefferson on one side.
So, all right. I like building out the team a little bit. So if I got A.J. Dillon in there, who am I considering for my second and third running back?
So again, like those high price guys, like if you can fit in McCaffrey, Cook, Kamara, I think Kamara of all the highest priced guys is going to be the most overlooked, if you will, because he's got a red Q tag by him. He was, out last week, and he's almost definitely going to play. But, to kind of the casual fantasy player, whenever somebody sees a red Q questionable by him, they tend to slide right by him. But, that is, a kind of lesser deployed like strategy, or I would more call it a tactic in tournaments, is to, really keep your eye on these, especially star players that are questionable throughout the week, because of that Q tag, they'll go lower owned, and you could get some good leverage on the field by playing those guys. So, I'd strongly consider, Kamara of the 3 or 4 high priced guys to jam in, but just definitely don't overlook Cook and McCaffrey. McCaffrey had a huge game last week, again at low ownership because everybody's flocking to the low priced options. And he had a big game including just sitting the whole fourth quarter. I don't know if you watched that game, but they were blowing them guys out. So they didn't want to take the risk of re-injuring McCaffrey. So they sat him. Otherwise, he could have had 25% more fantasy points because he sat out the whole fourth quarter, I think.
That's fair. I mean, Cam Newton's safety blanket was McCaffrey when he was there, when he was in. I mean, because now you got 2 running back threats.
Yeah. Right? So yeah, that's an interesting concept. But you do bring back. So the concept is McCaffrey's production going to be negatively impacted by Cam being the starter there now, right? At the very least, does it take McCaffrey's touchdown equity down a couple notches, because Cam ball hog, runs it in there at the goal line? Could he vulture some of McCaffrey's TDs? But what you said, bringing up the history, I mean, they perform extremely well together. I mean, McCaffrey has shined in the past with, Cam as his quarterback. So, I don't think it's going to have too much of a negative impact on his production.
That's fair. So, all right. Continuing to unlock this slate. So, question for you is Connor disappointed me last week, right? Because I had 2 weeks ago, I had Edmonds in my lineup. I was going to smash with Edmonds. Edmonds gets hurt. And then Connor has a monster day.
Yeah.
Pissed me off, right? And so last week I went back to Connor because I was like, okay, well, Edmonds is out, go Connor again. Dude, this week you get a weak Seattle run defense versus Arizona. You don't have DeAndre Hopkins playing probably this week. But
you have Kyler Murray. And I think that's Kyler's going to be back. And I think that's the key to determining whether or not you want to play Connor, right? Because the more and more they got, the backup QB there, the more and more, defenses are going to key on the run, right? Because they don't believe that, the Cards can be as productive with the pass. So I'm a little less bullish on Connor this week than certainly 2 weeks ago. And, last week he ended up having a decent game. But, I would
Or does that mean you're more bullish? Because if Murray comes back, then defenses can't key to run, and maybe Connor can get off.
Yeah. No, that's you're exactly right.
Okay.
It opens up the offense, including the run game. So that's why I would be more on Connor.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry, I'm flipping. I started this the dialogue that he was less attractive of a play, but he becomes more attractive of a play with Kyler back. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so potentially if Edmonds is out and and Murray starts.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, Edmonds being out is the number one, criteria, and then the second criteria is with Kyler being in. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I might check that out.
Yeah.
One more question. This guy's expensive, and last time he played, I don't think he actually did. Well, no, he probably did very well. Chubb. What do you think of Chubb this week?
So how did he do last week? He was out, right?
He was out last week because of COVID.
Yeah, with COVID, right? So I'm just kind of trying to do the mental exercise around his ownership, and his price is not.
He's not cheap.
Yeah. So because he's not cheap, and because he didn't, play last week, so there's a little bit of that whole forgetfulness, like what have you done for me lately, right? He did smash 2 weeks ago, but not last week. So you could get him, because of that higher price point and because of lack of recency bias. Him at a pretty low ownership. Who are they going up against this week?
Detroit.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Well, yeah, the matchup, man. That's a juicy matchup. They're 25th or 26th in DVOA against the run.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Cleveland is favored to win that game. You never know with Cleveland. But, if they're favored, then theoretically they should be up in this game, especially, late in the third into the fourth quarter. So they could be doing that whole hand the rock to Chubb and let him salt away the game while accruing Ron some nice fantasy points. So I would go with him. But if he's probably within 500 of like Kamara and Cook and maybe even McCaffrey, right? So, you want to consider that too.
Mm-hmm. And even Taylor, right? Taylor's only a couple $100 more than Chubb, right?
Yeah. And how can you not play that dude? I mean, he might end up RB1 on the season if he continues at the pace that he's at, with King Henry down now, easily.
Yeah. So the reason I keep bringing up, my brother messed with me earlier on the show. The reason I keep bringing up Cleveland is like, Nate, I own Cleveland Browns tickets. I don't know if I told you that.
You do?
Yeah, I'm a season ticket holder. I'm a personal seat license owner of the Browns, man.
Did you ever live in the Cleveland area?
No, man. It was like the ultimate fantasy football play. You could this lets you know I'm either a really good investor or I'm a really bad gambler. One of the two. I don't really. So the year that the Browns went 1-15, I don't know if you remember that year.
Yep.
The personal seat licenses for Browns were like stupid cheap. I mean, you could buy a personal seat license lower level for $350.
Really?
Right? The only issue is that it obligated you to buy future season tickets, right? Okay. And then I was looking at like Seattle's personal seat license. I was looking at the Panthers, because I really wanted some Panthers seat licenses. Panthers was like 8,000 a pop. You know, Seattle's like 15,000 a pop. And I was like, yo, these Browns are like $350 a pop, man. Brown, you know, I'm gonna buy these Browns.
Yeah.
So I messed around and bought these Browns tickets for seat license for $350 a pop, thinking they couldn't get any worse. Wrong. They went 0-16 the next year, right?
Yeah, the next year, right.
And so my liquidity.
But the thing about that is, man, there's a very small amount of teams in the league where it don't matter how poorly they perform, like the people in that city are going to back that team, right? Come out. And I think the Browns are kind of one of those teams, right?
They are.
So, you know, yeah, you had that going for you.
And so, dude, as soon as the Browns drafted Baker, just a little bit, man, I mean, season ticket prices took off.
Yeah.
Interest in my tickets on StubHub took off. Dude, seat license, the same seat license I bought for $350 are like trading for like over $4,000 right now.
Wow.
Yeah. So
nice. It's investment, brother.
Yeah. But it was like one of those fantasy football fun ones. Like, I'll just buy the Browns.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know,
that was more of a tournament play than a cash game play.
Exactly. Exactly.
I love
And
it.
so now that the Browns are doing pretty well and the fan base is excited, man, I'm hoping to I need to exit these soon because I thought Baker was going to be more like Russell, or I thought Baker was going to be more like Mahomes. Not saying like he has to do what they do, but I thought he was going to get the franchise over the hump. And I don't think he's going to get the franchise over.
You know, similar on that similar note to the seat license, did you hear that Green Bay, for the first time in tens of years, is offering up shares in the Packers organization? You know, that's a publicly owned, franchise that the Packers are. And for the first time in I don't know how many years, they're gonna open up some shares to buy in.
Okay.
So,
all right.
Yeah, I ain't gonna touch that with a 1,000,000-foot pole, man. You know, I'm a disdain those cheeseheads, man. Being a Minnesotan.
I understand that. So I know we've been recording for about 20 minutes. I don't want to take up the rest of your night, but if there's something you want to educate, or no, I don't say educate, like if you're building lineups this weekend and you're focused on tournaments now, what nugget you leave with people?
Yeah, now I'll go back to that whole, I think the running back choice is going to unlock the slate, particularly focusing on these high-priced running backs that folks are going to overlook because of recency bias of those low-cost running backs really, going off. The couple other things, there are some high-priced, sticking with the kind of theme of ownership of high-priced guys that could absolutely, like they do every week, go off that are going to be overlooked. CeeDee Lamb sits at a price point among some other household names that people are going to want to click on. So CeeDee Lamb in that 56.5 total game. And then Justin Jefferson, we talked about him, similar to CeeDee Lamb, kind of sits in that kind of tier of players that I think a lot of fantasy footballers are going to want to click on. So if you, kind of can figure out how to maybe do one of the two, CeeDee Lamb and Justin Jefferson, along with at least one or two of those high-priced running backs, you could really lap the field in tournaments. Okay. And then lastly, we talked about this in the show. This slate sets up perfectly for that late swap strategy, right? So with 3 of the 5 highest total games, you can go all in on the 1 p.m. games, like high risk, high reward guys, and hopefully they go off, right? And then you can kind of secure or enhance your position on the leaderboard by in that, mid fourth quarter of the 1 p.m. games, swapping to kind of higher owned guys in the 4 p.m. games. So that even if those guys don't do well, the rest of the field has them as well. So again, you've preserved, if not increased, your position on the leaderboard. So those are really the strategy nuggets that I'd put out there for folks that are going to do tourneys this week.
All right, let's pause here for a second. All right.
Yeah.
So you're saying, let me make sure. One, we're math guys, right? So
yep.
I kind of get it. I'm an engineer, we like poker, we like math, we like stats, but just in case it went over some people's heads.
Sure.
All right. You're saying, let's say there's a cheaper wide receiver or a cheaper running back in the early game that you could go after. You're saying,
well, it's not dependent on price. It's more about like go for those, like load up in your lineups in the 1 p.m. The players that are in the 1 p.m. games, load up on these like high reward but maybe higher risk players. So whether it's they're higher risk because of their price point, or they are lower price but they're boom or bust type of players. That price point doesn't matter. It's just go all in on these high risk, high reward players in the 1 p.m. games, and then late swap to guys in the 4 p.m. games, dependent upon how those high risk, high reward guys did in your 1 p.m. games. So again, if they did really well, you're sitting pretty, and so you can late swap to guys that you project have higher ownership by the rest of the field in the 4 p.m. games, right? Because that will then preserve your positioning on the leaderboard, if not, help you go up regardless of how those guys do, because those higher owned guys, everybody owns them, right?
Yeah.
However, if those high risk, high reward guys that you went in on in the 1 p.m. games don't do well, if you're just kind of sitting right below the cash line, then do the whole push all your chips in and late swap to more high risk, high reward guys, right? Because that's really the only way that you're going to get into the green and meaningfully into the green is if your 4 p.m. guys that you late swap to that are higher risk, high reward go off. What's the downside if they don't go off? You'll remain in the black or in the red, I should say.
Yeah. Okay. I like it. So it gives you a chance to take risk early, but then modulate your risk back, or it gives you a chance to modulate your risk more to kind of
that's right
where you end up at.
Yep, spot on. And it's easier to do if you're doing these tournaments that are like 3 lineup entry, right? If you're like max entering the Millie Maker with 150 lineups, I mean, good luck, at like 3:30 p.m. trying to like scroll through all your lineups and do the late swaps. However, there are tools out there, like on Roto Grinders, these optimizer tools where you can kind of import your lineups as they were originally set, and then kind of say, hey, these are the late 4 p.m. game guys that I want to have exposure to in my lineups, and it'll kind of put them into a CSV file that you can then re-upload to DK or FanDuel, and kind of mass swap out players. So there's more efficient ways to do it, but it's much more easy to, at least from a hand build standpoint, to work in these kind of lower to medium sized tournaments that are 3 entry or 20 entry or whatever.
Okay, I love it.
Mm-hmm.
So well, man, that's probably all we got, folks, for the Unscripted, man. But Nate, before we go, man, I still need you to kind of show me how to do that optimizer trick you was doing a couple so whenever you have time one day, I'd love to connect with you, because I really enjoy doing the tournament builds when I actually have time to do them. I really
yeah, man. And these optimizers, Roto Grinders is the one that I primarily use. They're user friendly, right? So we'll spend maybe half an hour, and you'll be able to, kind of run with it from there. Just really starts with deciding player pool. Like, who do I want to take out of my player pool, right? And then for the guys that remain in your player pool, choosing what percentage exposure you want to have. And you just, type in, hey, I want to have 23% exposure to this guy. I want to have 43% exposure to this guy, right? So once you do that, there's a couple other kind of bells and whistles that you can play with. But after that, you just press build, and it can crank out as many lineups as you choose that you want to have. So they're real slick tools, and I would say definitely the sharks that are max entering these Millie Makers and other high payout tourneys are using them extensively. So it's the differentiator and really doing well in these large field tournaments.
For sure, man.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, and as always, man, I just enjoy kicking it with you, man. Talking about
man. Likewise, man. So it was good rapping with you, Ron Fun.
All right, man. Good to see you.
Yeah.
And folks, this is our Unscripted, man. You can check us out on our website, cometruenetwork.com. It's very simple. I just put whether or not somebody's a cash play or a GPP play. That's it. That's all you get. No analysis, no nothing. This is just our views. Go to the site, check it out. It's very simple. I'm gonna try to get Nostradamus Nate to put some of his views out there this week, so you can see some of his picks too. So,
gotcha.
All right, man.